Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the well. Um, this is a night that will be difficult to talk through, but we want to have the conversation. Uh, so, good evening, everybody. Welcome. So tonight, we're going to have a conversation that I honestly, this was not planned, and so tonight we might have a couple of things and a couple of times where it's going to appear that we're just having a raw conversation. We are. In lieu of all of the stuff that's been happening, Ahmaud Arbery, with George Floyd, with uh, with all of the stuff that's been happening with Amy Cooper and the gentleman in New York, we decided that we just could not go on as normal, and we needed to have a deep conversation. With all the conversations I've had with my black friends, the conversations I've had with my white friends, the conversations that I've had with my Asian friends, my Hispanic friends, we figured that tonight's conversation needed to surround the conversation of justice, the conversation of freedom, the conversation of liberty, the conversation of America, the conversation of racism, the conversation of prejudice, the conversation around segregation. And so tonight we're going to dive deep into those tough conversations. And I promise you that today I did not want to have this conversation because, quite frankly, as a black man in America, I'm tired of having the conversation. And that's just me being real. That's just me being frank. I hope that you will take a second, that you will like this post, that you will share this post to your wall, your Facebook wall. If you're on YouTube, I hope that you will share this with your friends, maybe message them. We're going to have a real conversation this evening. And it's a conversation that will not be the end conversation, but perhaps it will be a conversation that will spark other conversations, a conversation that will spark change, a conversation that will invoke new justice, real justice. Nonetheless, it'll be a conversation. So for the next hour, we ask that you sit down, join in with us, comment on this, share your thoughts. Let's make it an interactive experience. This is the Well Encounter, and we're going to come to you live. We're going to come to you totally raw. We ask that you share this, and we're going to have a quick moment of prayer. Our brother Luis sent in a prayer for us. Jackie, if you can, over Amplify Network, share that prayer, and we'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. These are very crazy times, but I find it very important to make sure that I continue my prayer life, even in all this craziness. So let me pray for you. God, thank you for another day of life. Thank you for just being there for us in all these perilous times. We know that new norms are being established every single day on how we are going to love and how we're going to interact with each other. But we know that the one norm that is not going to change is your love. It is your being in our lives, is you doing your work for us and through us. We ask that we continue to do the work for you, and we continue to do the works that require challenge, the works that require change, the works that require love, in order to create a better world in your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Love y'all. Miss y'all. See you.
Amen. We also wanted to share, a few days ago I was on Instagram, or maybe yesterday, and there was a song, I don't know if you guys saw it, that a young black male put up, and the song touched my heart. It really spoke to how I've been kind of feeling during this whole situation. And so we also wanted to share that with you in case you haven't seen it. And then when we come back, we will have the conversation. Jackie, is that queued up? Hopefully it is. We could go to this young black male boy who is singing this song.
I'm a young black man doing all that I can to stand. Oh, but when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind, every day I'm being hunted as prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough struggle. I just wanna live. God protect me. I just wanna live. I just wanna live.
That sums it up. That summed it up.
I think I want to start by asking you all, both as an educator, as a human being, as a citizen, where are you? How, I don't even know how to ask that question, but what right now is this saying to you?
Okay, I don't mind starting. So I'll start about this song in particular. When I first heard the song, I went to the comments and people's responses range from beautiful, wow, this touched my soul, this was restorative, this is just what my soul needed. And I completely disagree. I did not feel that this song was beautiful. I felt like it was hurtful, and you should never hear a boy or any person singing, I just want to live. Right? Like, there was nothing beautiful about it. It was like a dagger through my heart. Like, nobody should ever have to cry out just for the chance to live. And, you know, I could guess how old that boy is. I don't know. I would say like 12. And so I absolutely look at him and see my students, and it's an unfortunate reality. You know, watching All American, those who have seen it on Netflix, there's an episode, I don't know if you've gotten there yet, so spoiler alert for anybody. We watched the whole season in like a week. But there's an episode where they have an interaction with the police, and they had a very candid conversation. They're in Beverly Hills or wherever, some rich place, but the son is black. And they talk about how they're going to treat you different. And he thought just because he had moved out of the poor area that things would be different. And the reality is no. Like, your money doesn't save you from what you look like.
At all.
So.
At all. For me, I'm numb. If I could be honest, like, I am infuriated, but I'm numb at the same time. I believe these things have happened so much that we just became desensitized to it. So when it happens, it's like, is something going to really change just because of this case? Because we saw it with Ferguson, we saw it with Sandra Bland, we saw it with
there are too many.
There's just too many.
You couldn't even start the name.
And so you're just
problem.
For Loud Crash Show, you just get this really, like, I mean, can I really affect change? I think that's the real question that happens inside of me. Like, and being local, you know, having friends that are my same complexion, having friends that are not my same complexion. It's just like, what do you do to change this?
Yeah.
And I've asked that question so many times because I am definitely, Jackie, the background, I am definitely someone who is not about talking about the problems, but looking for a solution. So it's happened so many times. I've asked this question so many times, like, okay, so this has happened. How do we change it? What do we change it? Like, on a grassroots community level, like, what do you do to change this? And I've never really gotten a real question. I've never really seen real action. So at this point, I'm just like, and this is going to sound harsh, but we say we're going to be wrong. What? Like, what do you do? Like, I don't know. I'm stuck. I'm like, in place. Like, I think the only way to kind of sort of do this is affect change in policies and government. And you see, we have people in government, but it still happens. So I just don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm numb. I've been trying to follow it at a distance because
self-preservation. You almost have to.
Because you have to watch what you feed yourself. You know, like looking at movies and stuff that depict this all the time, I don't want to see them anymore. Like, was it Clean and Slim? I didn't want, like, when it got to, I was like, okay, you know what? I just don't want to see this no more. Or I don't want to see a black man being killed by a cop or being injustice being served on his behalf. I just can't do it no more. So I'm watching from a distance. I am keeping up with everything, but Am I really the one that can talk about this whole case? No, I just go off of Facebook posts and stuff, honestly, because I just want to reserve my energy. I mean, we're already in a pandemic. You got to watch who you go around. I mean, you got protesters out with masks. Like, what? What next? What next? And then black and brown people are is the ones that are being highly affected by COVID itself. And then you put this on top. So, and then you got the case in New York. And then you got the guy in the WeWorks at the same day in the same place. What? I don't know. I'll go ahead. Charles said, the action I would take would be illegal. So no action taken over here. Hashtag Malcolm X approach.
So let's talk about where we are now. We do know that just a few minutes ago, the U.S. Attorney came out and talked about the fact that there might not be enough. There might be some other evidence that restricts them from totally convicting the police officer in the George case, right? Mm-hmm. We know that President Trump has said something. It took him a little while, but he finally said something. But it appears that his action right now is more against social media because they restrict him from saying what he wants to say.
They didn't restrict him. They just put a fact checker on it. They just put, these are the facts about it.
We know that Ahmaud Arbery was shot down while jogging by two white men who hunted him down, and another white man who recorded it, who hunted him down to record the death. And that video was passed around. It is something to just watch and talk about. A young black man lay dead in the street because he was shot to death, and it was the footage was not looked at as a human being dying in the middle of the street. It was looked at as entertainment,
and we got
clear,
and we got him.
And we talk about Amy Cooper in New York, who did not have her dog on the leash, so she was not following the law. But when she was approached by a black man and asked that to follow the law, it was said that she in defense called 911 and used his race against him.
I'm gonna say a
black man was threatening her. Meanwhile, she almost choked her dog to death.
Hey, okay, real moment. I was dying laughing at the dog. No, seriously, because the dog was about to bite her. She's about to get justice from the dog because the dog was going off. Like, let me go, okay? Then y'all see the little picture on Facebook where they got the dog like in the interrogation room. It's like, yes, I was choked in Central Park.
So here's the question. There are protesters in Minneapolis, and they have taken to the streets because they are outraged, they are hurt, they're disappointed. What I do love is that I was watching Fox News right before we got on. I was watching CNN, and I do notice that they're not being called thugs. They're not being called gangsters. They're actually being called protesters. But let me ask a question. Do they have a right to protest in the way in which they're protesting?
Yes.
But they're destroying their city. They're destroying their town. Why do they have a right to do that? Why is that justifiable? Is that justifiable? I'm asking you all too. Is that justifiable?
I would say yes, because peaceful methods have not worked. Like point blank period. I mean, we was kneeling in the stadiums and they was going crazy about that patriot. I mean, you had the sit-ins at the counters back in the civil rights movement, and they still hung people. I mean, at this point, I mean, how much can you do to somebody before they get fed up? I mean, just think about your own self. Like, how much can someone keep poking and poking and poking and poking and poking at you until you just go off? And I'm not saying that it is that I agree that. No, I'm saying I agree. I'm sorry. I was about to be politically right. I'm not saying I don't agree with the protests and the riot, but no, I agree with everything. I mean, a lot of them probably are impoverished and people of that sort. So if I went to Target, I would give me some stuff too. I'm sorry, just being real. We were talking about real, right? Mm-hmm. So they're talking up. I wish I would have been there. I was watching things. I was like, dang. They got the Instapot, the blankets and stuff. I was like, I need an Instapot, a Ninja mixer. I wish I knew somebody up there. Go ahead, grab that for me, baby. Go ahead, get that for me real quick.
Sean Michaels Wilson says it's protesting and it's rioting. Brother Brennan says because the town is destroying the people. That's why they can actually destroy the town. Kiana says, I don't condone, but I understand. Yeah. Brennan says nothing that is being destroyed can't be rebuilt. George's life ain't coming back. Marshall says, I believe they have the right to protest, but protest in a smart way. Don't tear down your own communities by looting, because you're basically doing their job for them. How do you feel, Vanessa?
I agree that people have the right to protest. I don't know that you get to dictate how somebody else expresses their anger. I don't necessarily encourage people breaking the law, but I absolutely understand the emotions behind what they're doing. So can I say that I would go out and do the same thing? No, probably not. Jovan brought up, like, I don't know what to do. And you and I have had this conversation. The problem is it is so big. It is so ingrained in who you are. And it's not so much about, yes, you can do some things, but it is less about what you can do and more about what the people who are in power can do. So I think everyday people, one thing that we can do is apply the pressure, right? And so with Aubrey, what you saw was this video had been out for a while. It wasn't until it was shared and it was made public that people began to apply the pressure. No, y'all need to do something, right? Down to who the DA was. Nope, do better, right? Like, so I think the pressure that citizens apply can cause change. But when you're dealing with systematic oppression, it is the people who are in power of those systems that have to uproot the system. And that's a bigger struggle.
So we have some comments. Sean Michael Wilson said, remember when riots happened? I don't remember. I don't think nobody really remembers right now at the table, but remember when the riots happened after MLK's death in D.C. that made way for the shift to this major gentrification in D.C. That makes sense. CJ said, Robin and all that is not the answer, but the thing is, I don't think anyone knows the proper answer.
Right.
Byron Phillips said, justifiable. I don't know what the catalyst for destruction is when the peacekeepers can kill you and not get arrested, then the balance is thrown off, and then chaos and anarchy takes over. Brennan said, listen, I'm not giving any more energy to the symptom. Rioting is a symptom. Let's deal with the issue. I like that, Brennan. I really love that. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the dogs, right? Like, you pin a dog against the wall, guess what?
Okay, so I hear people like, you don't agree with the looting and the rioting. So what should the people have done? Marched, and then they get tear gas and they send in instigators just like they did in Ferguson when they did peacefully march. They did riot, but then there was a lot of peaceful protests still going on in Ferguson. And then the cops sent out instigators who infiltrated the riots and started going crazy. That has been a proven fact. So when you've really tried everything, if we can go all the way back to Selma March, it was peaceful. But they met them on the other side with dogs and things. Same thing we look at today. When you do peaceful stuff, what's the result of your peaceful?
Right. So let's go a little further. So one of the reasons I was so upset yesterday, you all saw I had a little bit of a Facebook rant. I think I got to the place where I was tired of having to be that person that was always playing the political correctness game. That was always playing the political correctness game. That was always trying to be nice. But I think there's a place where I also want to make sure there's education from this thing. So again, like this, share this, because we want to get some education going. We want to have this conversation, and there are people that need to hear this conversation. There are white people that need to hear this conversation. There are black people that need to hear this conversation. There are Spanish people that need to hear this conversation. There are all sorts of people that need to hear this conversation. One of the things that struck me yesterday, I was having this day of really just built up anger. And I told my mom, I said, I am tired. And I said, I just want to post what I want to post. I don't want to think about myself as just a pastor. I don't want to think about myself as a liaison between black and white folks. I do some work over at the Table Church. I don't want to think about not offending the white people that are my friends. I don't want to think about if my black friends are going to approve what I post. I don't want to think about if the clergy, the older clergy are going to prove my post. I just want to be me for a second. And I had this anger built up. And I said, Grandma, I'm angry today. She said, why are you angry? I said, because I don't understand what's going on. It's the black people that are being mistreated. And I had one of the most real moments of my life. My grandmother looked at me, she says, oh, you just now getting angry?
Mm-hmm. Oh, because grandma was around for the Civil War.
She said, this isn't new.
Ooh,
she said, but the difference is y'all actually have a voice.
Mm.
And she went on to tell me the stories of the women who were raped by white men, right, in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 40s, the slaves who were beaten and bruised and treated, and the black men who were paraded around naked to defame them and to demasculate them, to degrade them. The black folks, the black men who were raped, mm-hmm. and who had to take the white men in the rear because they wanted to prove that they were superior. And so it takes me, I think when we talk about the education that has to be shared, it has to be understood the anger that the folks are showing in Minneapolis is not just a right now thing.
Right.
There are years and years and years of pent-up aggression for years and years and years of being treated like you're not even a part of society. Black folks were sold back then because they were looked at as animals, not as people. Mm-hmm. And so there's this aggression that now is pent up. And so when you look at Minneapolis, there's a foundation of anger, right, that lies underneath what is happening.
We got some comments too.
Yeah, let's go.
Javon Keith Gray said, I won't say as to whether or not they're right because they experienced it in person, and that to me is an even deeper pain than the ones who feel distance, right? Feel it at a distance. But if you're destroying, it needs to be corporate establishments, not small businesses. If my brother's struggling, I don't destroy his business. I cripple the establishment that establishment that is destroying both of us. Sean Michael Wilson said, "Go vote." Brennan said, "If we focus on this, we are fighting a two-front war. Let's deal with the issue and then deal with the symptom." Reggie New Life said, "Peaceful protests are always the answer. I feel because when two people argue, you can't tell who is the fool." That's like some old wisdom right there. Sean Michael Wilson came back and said, "You need to have leadership that understands the culture of the community. The people who serve and represent the community should reflect the community." Brennan came back and said, "Talk."
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree with some and I disagree with others. I don't think peaceful protest is always the right way. I just don't. I'm going to own it. I mean, what has it gotten you?
So a friend of mine, Matthew Wilkie, great friend of mine, asked me years ago about joining a protest. I don't even remember what the protest, who it was for. I mean, that's how many of these things we've seen. And I responded, no, I'm not going. And I remember his awe of me not going. My friend Matthew is white. He's a pastor. Great guy. This is in no mean to tear him down at all. He's a wonderful guy. And I think he kind of was stunned that I wasn't going. He said, dude, why not? He was like, we're going to march for justice. And I remember saying to him, because Matthew, in a few years, in a few months, we're going to go through this all again. Mm-hmm. So what's the point of my marching? Listen, it worked back then because marches were not the heard of thing. That was a new way of black folks demonstrating their power and demonstrating, right, their camaraderie along with white folks to say, no, like, we're marching because this is what provokes change. And that was a new concept in a way for black folks to get together and be able to march like that in the way they were marching with those numbers. Okay. But I don't know that the marching really pushes anymore. I don't know that it has the power that it once had.
We have one good comment.
Yeah.
Angela Wells said, when black peaceful protesters are tear gassed and white armed protesters are allowed to enter state capitals unchecked, it's not about the method of protest.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
But I think, like, when we were talking about the protesting, you can see the discrepancies even within the protest. So do I think my pushback is what I do think sometimes protest does is it brings awareness to issues, right? Mm-hmm. When large numbers of people congregate, what it tells you is it's important to them, right? So I think that's a factor. Just because I see a lot of people blocking the middle of the highway, do I think it's going to change racism? No.
But it can agitate.
Do I think all of these people messing up this city is going to make the world go, or at least the nation go? Do I think it applies a little bit of pressure? Yes. So I think it does something. Is it going to completely eradicate racism? No.
But remember, this was kind of sort of the tactics of what's the SCLC, the Southern Leader Christian, what Martin Luther King was a part of. They went in to get press. They did peaceful protests so that the press would hear it and so that it could be seen on a bigger scale. I don't know, y'all. I'm just stuck.
Well, it's interesting. So, Audrey, I see you. I'm not quite sure what you're questioning. So if you could just expand on your question. I saw you say Bible ? Just give me a little more of that. What do you mean by that? And my sister Kim Carr she commented on something I said yesterday, and there were a couple other people who sort of messaged me because I think yesterday people saw on my social media a different part of me.
I actually got calls about your social media. His best friend, they're like, "What's wrong with Ramon?" I haven't talked to him, but I guess he's okay.
Yeah,
he's angry.
But there's a right. What do you mean? What's wrong?
He's angry.
Go to the news.
and so that's listen. And I think yesterday that's that place I got to was I was tired of being politically correct. I was tired of being nice, and I wanted to sort of say exactly what was on my mind. Let me paint a picture for the world that's watching. And again, I want to pause and say, share this if you think there are people that should be a part of this conversation. Share this in your messenger, share this on your page, share this to your groups, share this as much as you can because this is a conversation that definitely needs to be had. Yesterday, I think I got conflicted. I woke up in the morning and I again saw the coverage of George Floyd, and it tore me to shreds. Let me give a real life picture. I was talking to a friend of mine before I got on tonight, and I said, as a pastor, here's the thought that's a little different. When I'm driving in my car and I'm pulled over by the cops, I don't think about being a man of God. I don't think about being a pastor. The first thought in my head is, SHIT.
Sugar honey iced tea.
I'm a black man with dreads, especially if I'm not dressed in a suit or a tie or nicely. And even when I am, what is about to happen? How do I make sure that this cop knows I'm a good person?
Right.
How do I make sure that I don't say the wrong thing? How do I make sure that how do I test if this cop is having a good day or a bad day? Mm-hmm. Because depending on that cop's attitude, this could be my last day of life. That goes through my mind every time that I am stopped by a cop. White America, you don't have the same reality. You don't have to think that way every single time. When I teach my grandchildren, when I think about my kids, my sons, when I think about our mentees, when I think about our family and our friends, we have to have the conversation all the time. This is what happens when you're stopped by a cop. Keep your hands low or keep your hands high. Don't move fast. Announce every move that you're going to take. Don't look scared. Don't look too serious. Don't look upset. Watch your tone. Those are the thoughts. And when I posted yesterday, I was tired. I was frustrated because then I have to turn around and explain this to my white friends, my white colleagues, my white, I gotta explain it. Then I have to explain. I'm already feeling pressure. So I'm a pastor. I have to watch out for the congregation, the congregants. I have to watch out for my friends. I have to watch out for my mentees. And then I have to turn around and explain why I have pressure, why I feel a certain way. I can't just go into public as a black man with dreads and do what I want to do freely without thoughts, without premonitions, without upsetness, without angst. I can't wear the mask for COVID-19 and walk around the store and think, oh, they're not watching me. And I'm a pastor.
And you feel that you have to use those things to try to lighten. Oh, you know, I'm a pastor. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know, I'm here with my mentees, because you're trying to use these other components of yourself to prove, listen, I'm not the threatening person that you think I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That my skin, that you have predetermined by my skin that I am. Mm-hmm. Not even by even saying anything to me. You automatically look at me and be like, nah, I'm going to watch you. Like, I can't. Yeah, keep going.
So this is why we're upset. Dylann Roof walked into a church and killed 9 people. 9 black people.
Shot him.
Walks out of the church. The police arrest him nicely and then take him to jail. George Floyd, as the videotape shows, was not a resisting arrest. Is on the ground in handcuffs, and a white man puts his knee on his neck and suffocates him to death.
For 8 minutes. 8 minutes.
Why shouldn't we be mad? Why shouldn't black folks be mad? But then if I walk into a conversation mad, I am called the angry black man. If you walk into a conversation mad, you are the angry black woman. And might I add, because Vanessa's mixed, nobody sees the white part of her. They just see the black woman who's mad. Let me ask you a question. What does the world look like from your eyes as a person who is biracial?
What does the world look like? I think the world is still very divided. How do I see people, I think, is a little different. But I think you would have to absolutely be blind to not say that racism exists, oppression exists, and prejudice exists. So, I mean, being biracial doesn't change that fact. Mm-hmm. Being biracial doesn't change the fact that you can see protests happening and see one group being considered hostile and threatening and tear gas and all of that, and you can see another group with guns and it seems okay. So I don't know that being biracial necessarily makes you see the world differently. Personally, what I find sometimes that I have to battle is I feel ready to defend everybody. You know what I'm saying?
You do.
So I do. I mean,
it's about you.
I'm like, well, maybe let's analyze perspectives, right? Like that's my immediate. And it's tough because I grew up, you know, my mom is white. She was born in the West Indies. So, right, like my whole side of the family is white. And part of the reason they left the country was because of racism.
Wow, I never knew that.
And so I have a really hard time. I know we're like white people, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, not everybody, guys. Hold on, because like I've got some really good white people in my family. And so I struggle. And, you know, I was telling Ramon the other day, there's some people that I went to school with who are like, there's this post going around and it says, white people do something. So there are, but even if you look at, let's take it, Jim Crow, it is the people who have the places of privilege that have to do something to evoke change. So when I talk about a system of oppression, the only way to break down a system of oppression is for the people who are in charge of the system to break down the system of oppression. And so it really does become a situation of those who have power have to do something. And sometimes people don't always recognize the power that they have. But, you know, earlier I watched a video about Jane Elliott, and Luis made a comment, so don't let me forget this. But Jane Elliott was talking in front of a whole auditorium of white individuals, and she said, stand up if you want to be treated the way we treat Black Americans. And she said, oh, you guys didn't understand the directions. Okay, what I mean is the way we treat African Americans, if you're okay with being treated that way, just stand up.
Crickets.
She said, so then you see it. Right? And so I think it's easy to kind of sit in a place. Sometimes when we're in a place of privilege, we don't recognize the place of privilege. I think we talked about that before. But because when you get pulled over, you don't think about that, right? Like there are certain things that as a woman, I don't automatically go like, do I look scary because I'm 5'2" and like a female, right? So that's a place of privilege, right? My complexion, I recognize, is a place of privilege. So when you are in that place of privilege, when you can go, no, that's wrong, and I have to do something to fix it, right? There's the anti-racist curriculum in schools that talk about teaching everybody when you see something to recognize that as a moment of racism and do something to fix it. You have to break it down, call it out, like sexism. When somebody says something, whether you are a male or a female, you go, nah, that's sexist. We don't do things like that, and you fix it. All right, so Louise says, it is amazing how we have to live with stereotypes and bias another person has of us as a person of color.
Yeah. So we have some really good comments. Thank you everyone for participating.
Make sure you share this on your page, share it in your groups. If you're just joining us, share it to people that need to have this conversation.
Brandon said, I get followed all the time through the stores. Yeah. Juwan Keith Gray says, the anxiety and constant pressure is something that is hard to even put in words. Brendan said, our humanity is a threat to them, to our Black humanity. Matt Edison said, or Easton said, and certainly the history of Black and white relations in the country from the Civil War to present unmistakably shows that as people, America has never intended for Blacks to be free. To this day, in the eyes of most whites, the Black man remains subhuman. It was a quote from James H. Caan. Nestle, is it how you say her name? Nestle? Nisle, Nis.
Nelsie.
Hey, Nelsie. It doesn't seem like biracial people, she's talking to you, Vanessa, it doesn't seem like biracial people get embraced by the white culture. They are almost always assimilated into Black culture. And then Matt comes back and says, as a biracial person, I experienced the good Negro and good white folk mentality early on. Yeah. And Brendan said, willfully
what does that mean?
Ignorance. Matt, what can you explain? Can you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, it's the good Negro. It's the your hair, right? It's
okay, yeah, like the light skin.
There's a thing, and let's educate. The white is right.
Mm-hmm.
White is right. So back in the day, right, anything that was closer to white was right. That's why you see. Better. That's why light skinned people. That's the whole light skin. You're light skinned, so you get right. The light skinned Negro or slave was in the house because they were closer to being white, and usually they were light skinned because they were the slave master's kids, and so they were closer to being right. Light skinned people have better texture of hair. And I hate that better texture, but that it's better because it is more like white. You ever watch if you want to see some of that sort of reference, watch the thing on C.J. Walker, Madam C.J. Walker it's on Netflix.
Mm-hmm. The comment before that.
Nelsie. Thank you, Nelsie. Somebody told me how to say it. Thank you.
Well, the comment before it said that biracial people seem to be accepted by the Black community. So my white mother, very early on, I absolutely remember having the sit-down conversation about, listen, you are Black, right? The world will look at you, and they will treat you like you are Black. And so I think for that reason, it's just been that, even whether you were biracial because the slave master raped your mom or whatever the case may be, you were still a slave. Like, make no mistake about it. Like, that's just who you are. So that's just my quick response.
Yeah.
To that.
And, I think the protesters now aren't being called to, I was thinking about this question. Has anyone here protested ever? Have you ever protested at all? Okay. I have to. Because I thought when you said about Wilkie, you did. I remember I protested Troy Davis. Y'all remember the Troy Davis case? The guy in Florida who was wrongfully evicted, sentenced to death row, and was given the chair. They was trying to get the sentence was commuted, and it didn't. But in protest, me and some people I knew at the time, we carried a fake coffin from Columbia Heights all the way down 14th Street straight to the White House, and in quiet solidarity. And it was something that like I'll never forget because it meant so much to like protest, to say I don't agree with what's going on right now. Would I riot? Yes. Y'all gonna get mad at me. I would riot.
I don't think anybody's going to get mad at you.
I think that's your truth, though.
I would riot. I would definitely riot. But I would not riot in my own community. Honestly, I really wouldn't. We're going to ride. I'm not going to ride in District Heights. I'm going to go to Georgetown. And I'm going to mess up something
But
over there on Foxhall and stuff like that. Let me go mash up some of y'all stuff. Y'all not going to mess up right here. Like Sean Michael Wilson referenced after Martin Luther King's death, that's why 8th Street looked like that for so many years. 8th and H, because we ride and tore up our whole neighborhood. And then we had all these dilapidated buildings. It doesn't look like that now due to gentrification. But rioting, I don't agree with rioting in your own community. Honestly, if I can take a side to rioting, I don't believe that like we should destroy where we need to go.
So let me ask this question, and I want you all to pitch in the comments as well. There's a conversation in white America right now. I think because of the place we're in with COVID, and some of us are still at home, places are still partially there. There's an absorption of what's happening a lot more. Mm-hmm. And white America is asking the question, what can we do? How do we do more than just post? And I will let me say sort of what Vanessa said. I've got some white colleagues, some white friends that are really, really upset with what's happening. They're trying to figure out how to be better allies.
Yeah.
They want to know how to be better allies. Now, I don't think that I need to go and explain that to them anymore as much. I am still willing to have the conversation. I will say that I personally am still willing to have the conversation. I think with this one, though, I just needed some space and some time. How do we then share with them how to move forward? Because I want this to be educational. I want this to be, part of the reason I wasn't sure about having this conversation was not because it doesn't upset me, but I'm tired of having the conversation. And I think the question is raised, how do Black people move forward and how do white people move forward? Before I answer that, Pastor Rick says, March 4th, 1991, I asked the college class, how can we change what we saw on the 3rd? Rodney King then said, why can't we just get along? I'm still praying we'll find a way, but we need to teach our children to see people, not race. How do we, I'll touch on something he just said, but I want to stay with the question, how do we move forward? If we could offer that advice, and people in the comments, how do we move forward?
It's so big though, so that's like, it's kind of hard to like find like the correct answer and the correct direction to go to, because when you look at how African Americans are treated in this country, it's not just the policing, it's the prison, the prison pipeline, it's systemic financial wealth and things of that sort, where we weren't able to get loans. Even still today, some banks won't. They won't say it's racist, but they just won't. It's so many things to tackle. So I guess my question to that question is, where do you begin? Like, what pot do you stick your hand in to like find the answer? And you know what I'm saying? It's so many things that affect us as people. Like you said, getting pulled over by the cops. For me, I don't really get pulled over that much. Not to say I don't speed, but I have like a little charisma with cops, and I usually walk away with no tickets.
Got some favor.
I got some favor, baby.
God is shining down like
every time.
Thou shalt not get
every
ticket.
time. And I don't know them camera tickets. I do. But
the cameras catch you. Yeah.
But I just don't know where do we really start? Like what can you do? Like healthcare. I mean, education, schools. I mean, housing. All that.
So I commented, and I see you, Brennan. I see you, Brother Brennan. Also, let me just read. I know Jackie said a lot of white people are protesting as well. I did see that on the news that there are white people in Minneapolis. Well, that might be why they're not being called thugs, because there are white people out there with them. Yeah, I see you guys. I'm coming to that. Let me just stick with this question. I'm gonna get to you. one of the things I posted on another pastor's page, I said, on two different pastors who are white, and I appreciated them for asking the question. One, let's have the conversation. No, you have the conversation with other folks who are white past the trending and past the headlines and past the hashtags. The conversation has to be continual. And so it's great that you're having it now, but the conversation has to be had moving forward continuously. They have to be in your small groups. And you cannot just have small groups for Bible study anymore. You have to have intentional small groups around racial justice. When I got on with the Table Church, that was one of the areas I was so happy to be a part of, to have a group that focused solely on racial relations in this country and racial relations around the world. And it focused on teaching about intrinsic bias. It focused on teaching about the history and the context of slavery, and we talked about food deserts, what that looks like in certain communities. If you don't know what that looks like, then go look it up. We talked about redlining. We talked about white flight. You can no longer not have the conversation. And so it's more than just being educated yourself or having Black folks share with you, but it's about white folks having the conversation. And you don't have to agree about everything, but you need to have the conversation so that you are aware of things. Because Black folks, we don't necessarily need to go to the history books. We still live in a racist world. You guys sometimes are blinded by certain privileges that are afforded to you, and if you don't have the conversation, you don't know it exists. I think there are documentaries like The 13th. I think there are shows or movies that have just come out like American Son.
When They See Us.
When They See Us. And so I think you have to continuously educate yourself. Let me go to a comment that I saw. Vanessa, before I move on. Again, conversation with people. Send this conversation in groups. Send this conversation a message that folks that need to have this conversation. And again, we want to talk about education, not just bashing folks. Brother Brennan and Sister Jackie, I saw what you said. Let's go back. Pastor Rick, I heard what you said. There's a danger in what you said, and I just want to use this as an educational moment because I also saw it, which is why I said I wanted to come back to it. You said what you said, and this is a teachable moment for everybody watching. You said what you said in a loving way, and I received that, brother, because you meant it in a loving way. We do have to teach our children to see everyone as human beings. I don't negate that, and I don't think anyone negates that. We have to be able to teach our children to see each other in humanity, through the eyes of humanity, that we are all human, that we all bleed red. If we're faith-based, we have to teach our children to see each other as Christian brothers and sisters created by God. But we have to be careful around the language of not seeing color, because if we aren't careful and we start to say we don't see color, then we possibly could turn a blind eye to injustice, to racism, to segregation, to prejudices. Because in order for you to see my struggle, you've got to see me as a Black man. In order for you to see my anguish and my pain and my hurt, you've got to see me as a Black man. And you've got to see the Black identity, and you've got to see the Hispanic identity, the Latino identity. You've got to see the Asian community and their identity, because there are struggles that are exclusive to certain communities. And if you don't see their color, you don't see their struggle. And so I just want to make sure that's understood. So I hope, Brother Brennan, Sister Jackie, that I clarified that, because I saw you all, but that's an educational moment. And I say that in love.
We have some more good comments. Let me see. Go back. So after Jackie said, so we got Matt. Matt said, the constructs of whiteness must be denied and dismantled, but this also means to deny self of privilege in society and be okay with that. Shar said, hey fam. Hey Shar. Neil, what she said? How'd she say? I'm gonna mess it up. I'm sorry. The next comment said, it's hard to come up with a solution because that will require privileged people to lose some privilege, and I'm not sure how that will happen. That's so true. Pastor Angela said, of course we see race. Pretending not to see race only communicates to kids and other adults that it's something bad we shouldn't talk about. Right. The problem isn't seeing race. The problem is failing to see humanity and failing to recognize the difference in experience that go along with it. Hey Yada, my sister, she said, keep calling them out, getting them fired, ruining their lives, ruining their lives, hit their pockets. But it's so deep and systemic. Jawan said, we move forward together. There has to be acknowledgement. There has to be correction. There has to be education. But I'm angry. I'm angry, honestly. And if we're being candid, as Christians, it's hard for me to directly go to table flipping Jesus, but not to first seeking God. Especially how I feel as a Black man responsible for the well-being of the next generation of Black men and youth. Brennan said facts. Brennan came back and said, and you have to see how the actions of our ancestors have caused, what we are today. Nusi, gotcha, boo. Thank you so much. Jackie said my comment was not about seeing color. Gina said indeed. Nilsi commented and said Nusi. Thank you so much.
Darren D says, I probably see color. The color palette of humanity is what makes it so rich and beautiful. What I don't see is anyone being better or worse than any other. Charles said, I was told we can't be mad at this injustice if we're not mad at other times when people kill people. So let me go back to something I said earlier when Kim commented on my post, and she's a sister of mine. She's an Asian sister of mine. I love her. There were a couple other folks who also were like, Ramon, I want you to find your peace. And I want everybody to hear me clearly. I am a person who, I have some unbelievable peace. Over the last couple of years, I found peace in myself, peace with the world, peace with God. I really try to live in peace, and I don't really let anything affect my peace. And I won't even tell you that this affected my peace, but I do want to share with people, you can be upset and angry and still have peace. So I want to move into what I kind of said back was, listen, when Jesus reacted by flipping over tables, it wasn't that Jesus didn't have peace, but Jesus was upset and needed to make sure that it was felt and heard, and they knew what was happening. When God, let's talk about God. When God sent the plagues over Egypt and then took the firstborn child of all of the Egyptians, God was sending a message. And are we to say that God does not have peace? When we saw David and his people taking the Ark of the Covenant and moving it from one place to the next, and God said, don't touch the Ark. And the Ark fell, and the person who was trying to save the Ark touched it and turned into pillar of salt. We can't say that God didn't have peace, but God meant what God meant. As a Black man in America, I mean what I say. I'm pissed off. I'm upset. And we have to be able to define what peace means when we use that word. It doesn't mean that I don't have peace. I have peace with who I am. I have peace with God. But I also know I'm upset. And I am entitled to it, to be upset. Mm-hmm. I am entitled to not always think that we have to sing Kumbaya. Things don't get settled by always singing Kumbaya.
I follow a podcast called Freakonomics, and I didn't get to hear the whole thing, but they had a lady on there today talking about, I guess they were talking about meetings, but she said something that I thought was so profound, and it reminded me of the conversation that we had last week, but she said, unhealthy peace is just as dangerous as unhealthy conflict. And so remember I think the hashtag of last week was fake peace or something like that, right? But it just made me, it's that dial back of, listen, this is just as dangerous. Covering it up, slipping it under a rug. No, everything is fine. It's okay. We put a Band-Aid on it. No, it's not fine. And it's okay. It's okay to let people know it's not fine.
So Jackie came back, and that's so true. It is not fine. Like, I don't want to just cut you
No,
off.
no,
But
it's fine.
Totally not fine.
My 2 cents. Okay, go on.
Jackie said my comment was to put emphasis on the fact that we are God's children. Shar said, I will agree with you. I agree that you have to see color, and you just don't need to be biased towards one color or the other. In a perfect society, we would have no superior race in theory. Hate isn't natural. It's a learned behavior, yet taught.
So I wish I could remember the book. I was sitting here trying to figure it out, but I had to do a report on a book a while back, and it talks about how you have to talk about color, right? Like children at 2 and 3, they learn shapes, they learn colors. When I look at you, when I look at somebody else, I can see color at 3. So this notion that I can't see color is not true. The person that said what you teach children is you don't talk about it, right? And so there was this example of 2 mothers in a grocery store. They've got their baby in a little buggy. They're going along. And the little girl says, Mom, why is that little girl so dirty? Because in her very primitive mind, this is my skin, and when I play in dirt, I get dirty. So why would the mother let, the daughter be dirty? And the mother goes, shh. And the author says, don't tell her, shh, you tell her. Well, we have melanin in our skin. Certain people have more melanin than others.
You explain it. You talk about it.
And, that literally is why her complexion is like that. And what that does is it makes it very clear, like color exists. But this is why people look different. And you go, you know what? But in the inside, she's just like you.
Mm-hmm. So,
that's good.
Jackie said it's a spiritual thing. No one is talking about spiritual warfare. That is so true. I'm with you with that, Jackie. Matt comes back and said, how does one move forward? How does one move forward deal with the fragility of those who are not melanin? POC.
People
of color.
All right. Yeah.
How does one move forward dealing with white fragility?
With white. Oh, I mean with white. Yeah, dealing with white fragility of those who are not melanated as or people of color. Gina said, say it. We're not okay. Jackie said, we have the right to be upset and disturbed, disappointed. We also have the right to fight spirit with spirit. Danny, go somewhere. Danny Gentry said, I'm white on the weekends.
Debbie says, racism is so prominent in our society and culture, we literally have to start changing the mentality of how we view people starting from birth.
Yes.
When we raise children, we teach them to treat people equally. In school, you teach all people's history. At work, you train employees on how to identify bias and fight not to see people of color as intrinsically suspicious. We allow everyone to live their lives fully without one group of people receiving worse or better treatment than another. Darren D says, I question the humanity of anyone who is not angry or frustrated at what is happening. So, 2 points. I know we're getting points where we're going to have to close, but let's touch on what Jackie said. The Bible says we fight not against flesh and blood, but we fight against powers, principalities, and rulers of darkness. Yes. So for my spiritual folk, it is about yourself. I think spiritual or not spiritual. Here's the thing. One of the things I challenge myself to always do is to see the perspectives of other people and to listen to the perspectives of other people. I think that all of us have to come to this conversation being able to hear. Now, Black folk, don't y'all get mad at me, but I'm going to say something y'all might not like, and quite frankly, I don't care. Here's the deal. There are a lot of white people who do not understand. And no, I do not think it is totally our responsibility to teach them everything. But if they don't know, then you cannot expect them to just do that. And so if you want to be a part of the change, and I know we're tired, y'all. I know we're tired. But I want to call you to the fact that even Jesus had to suffer a death. And it was Jesus who, in his humility, fought for the people until he died. We have to be willing to fight for our freedom until we die. We have to have some part of us that is willing to fight this battle continuously. Do I like it? No. Is it fair? No. But to my black brothers and sisters, we have got to be willing to fight continuously. We cannot just sit on our asses and go, it's going to be okay. To my white brothers and sisters, you have to continuously question everything you think you know. Because privilege has put you in a place that you don't feel like you have to question. Because truly, you don't. The challenge to you is to get out of your comfort zone and to ask yourself, what do I not see? What is it that they're saying, and is there validity? And not to just give an answer out of your own perception, but to sit with the perception of others by reading, by learning, by attending a black church, by going to a Spanish cabaret, by going to all of these different places and listening and hearing and participating. You can no longer just say, well, I don't like the loudness of a black church, if you don't take the time to understand the culture of the black church. You can no longer say, I don't like the way that Asians, the food they eat, if you don't take the time to understand why they eat the food that they eat. You've got to challenge yourself to move past yourself. And that is a true statement. I'm going to let Javon read because I know he's over here wanting to read, and then I want to read you guys something before we close down. Again, share this with people like this. Send it to groups that you're in. Send it to messengers of friends. Text it. Send the link to other people. It's on YouTube as well.
Shar said, Brandon replied back to Jackie, said, we're not only dying in the spiritual, people are losing their physical lives. It's both. Shar said, as a believer, I get along with everybody, no matter their color. I'm commanded to. Yes, I recognize color, but I'm not judging people based on their skin. Sean Michael Wilson said, racism is, in this age, it's really a generational curse and a spirit passed down. Matt Addison said, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Daniel Gentry said, black people seem more racist to me than white some people sometimes. Linda Furtado, training people into really seeing beyond race comes with relationships that involve risk. I heard it said it best, to hold people accountable for what they say and do, not for what they think or feel. Racist behavior is learned behavior, even if people are oblivious to their behavior. We have to teach, train, influence, and build relationships to shift and shape the narrative. Sean Gilliam said, I hear what you're saying, but here's another point. Informing and conversation only goes so far. Ultimately, it takes a person's change in perspective, experience. Matt Addison said, you can pray until you faint, but unless you get up and try to do something, God is not going to put it in your lap. Fannie Lou Hamer. Daniel comes back and said, we are so biased against every race other than ours at times.
And I'll pause real quick. I know that people are posting. I want to get through just a little bit more. And Richard says, I agree. After a few weeks of social media posting, it goes back to business as usual until the next incident. Change happens on the local level, and being engaged. We do need to always be vigilant of our position in this country. Let me pause. I want to read something.
Come on, Richland.
Thank you, Richland. Gina, a friend of mine, posted, and I'm grateful because she posted something, but then she reposted just a blurb of it. And if you have not had a chance, there is something called When My Beautiful Black Boy Grows from Cute to a Threat. For the folks who follow me, I will try to post this. I will also try to post this on the Wells page. So you go to the Wells page after we finish, maybe give me like 20 minutes so I can post it. It's a great piece, but I want to share just a blurb from it that she posted. It says, as a parent, how much longer do I have before my 8-year-old son grows from cute to a threat? This is a question I constantly ask myself. Maybe 20 years? No, that can't be right, because Ahmaud Arbery was an unarmed black boy killed at the age of 24 for just going on a deli jaw. Maybe 10 years? No, that can't be right, because Trayvon Martin was an unarmed black boy killed at the age of 17 for just wearing a hoodie. Maybe 5 years? No, that can't be right either, because Tamar Rice was an unarmed black boy killed at the age of 12 for just playing with toys in the park. I want you all to have the conversation more and more, because for Black and brown communities, and forgive me for not saying brown more throughout this conversation, we have seen that you can be as young as 10, 12, and maybe younger. When I think of the fact that this is not new, Emmett Till was accused of raping a white woman, which he did not do. It was proven later that he did not do. And white folks beat him so bad that his face was caved inward, that you could not tell he was a little boy when he laid in his casket. His mom kept the casket open because she wanted the people to see what they did to an innocent, not a black boy, an innocent young boy, an American boy, who was charged and convicted before he was taken to court. Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Emmett Till, the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, Eric Gardner, Philando Castile, Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Sean Bell, Rodney King, Oscar Grant, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Freddie Gray, Mike Brown, Sandra Bland, the former slaves, the unknowns, maybe me. Have this conversation, y'all. Have this conversation in your churches. Have this conversation in your household. Have this conversation with your neighbors and your community. Have the conversation. Share this with as many people as you possibly can. This is just the beginning. No, I take that back. This is somewhere down the line. My grandmother said it right. This was going on before.
You know what scares me? Real quick before you, because I want you to close out and stuff. I'm definitely feeling what Richard said. We get really frustrated and riled up for a season, and then it just goes away.
Yeah.
And I'm be honest, and I'm not going to say that that's not been me. So every time we get even more agitated and more agitated, and we get upset and we get upset, when do we take that energy and convert it into real change? You know, you have Black Lives Matter movement, you have Angela Rage, you know, you have the girl running, what's that, what's the guy? Biden's campaign. You have these people in great positions and stuff like that to affect change. When do we stop waiting for the moment to get upset and take every moment and be active?
Angie Thomas in The Hate You Give says, well, what hashtag is it this week, right? And so I think that's true, but I think the frustration people have is exactly what you alluded to earlier, where, okay, I don't know what else to do. So it is the hashtag. It is I'm angry in the moment, but you're right, after so much time, you just go back. I think, so, you know, we talk about how big this is, and Richard alluded to, like, locality, and you talked about having discussions in your home. You know, change for many, many years, they started in schools, but I think somebody said it earlier as well, how we have to change up the next generation. And I don't think that necessarily means like, we're all screwed now, all the adults, but I think you really have to be transparent about your own biases. Everybody about our own biases, because we have them, right? The imagery that we have, our own selves, right? Like if you look at a 10-year-old Black boy and a 10-year-old Asian boy, what are your own biases that you have when you look at these individuals, regardless of your own personal color? But then what do you do to challenge yourself about them, right? Do you have those conversations with your family? And then when you see those moments, do you like call it out? Like, nah, hold up, right? And so it was something else that I was watching. A little boy and a mom were in the car, and they see two boys running. And the boy, and they're Black people, and they see two Black boys running, but the boy's comment was like, dang, I wonder if they stole something. But like, why is that the
first thought? The first thought.
And she's like, that my 8-year-old black boy just thought that about 2 other black boys. You have to stop at that moment and call it out. And like, in your own household, that's not okay. And we do it to our own community.
Yeah. There are a couple of things, guys. If you want to continue this conversation, I asked a couple of things. One, this is the Well. This is the Well Encounter. We're a nonprofit organization. We are the unchurched church. We try to do church differently by having conversations, real conversations like this. I want you to follow our page on social media, on both what you're on now, Facebook and Instagram. It's at Encounter the Well. Please go follow us on both places so that we can continue this conversation. Number 2, if you support what we're doing, and we are trying to line up more dialogue like this, especially when we get back to meeting in person, I ask that you take a moment and consider what it looks like to partner with us and invest in what we're doing. And you can do that in a couple of different ways. One of them is to text a giving to us at 84321. If you want to text $5, $100, $200 to join in with what we're trying to do to establish a multi-ethnic, diverse community throughout as many places as we can, to have wells everywhere that can have these type of conversations, biblically based, spiritually based, and just open and honest dialogue. Help us. Text that number. You can also go to our website, www.encounterthewell.org. Read about us. There's some information that will be changing soon, but also the last tab is the tab to give. And you can check that tab and give right over the internet. Yeah, I want to thank the Amplify Network. Go like Amplify Network. We are there most Thursdays. We will not be there next Thursday. We're going to take a small break. But like our stuff so that we can keep up with what we're doing. Like Amplify stuff so that you can see all of the things that they're doing. They have a prayer every single morning at 6 o'clock. And we are grateful to be in partnership with them. I'll be giving the word at the Table Church online. You can look them up, not this Sunday, but that next Sunday. Our partners like Capitol Hill United Methodist Church and Gethsemane United Methodist Church. We're just grateful to have this sort of communication with you guys. And we're grateful for the people that
a lot of people joined in.
Also, to the groups that I'm a part of, BMCR and the National Black Caucus and all those other places, even those white affiliates, I want you all to take this seriously. You can no longer operate, and this is me, Ramon, saying this, I don't care how you take it, we can no longer operate the way we used to. We can no longer operate without listening to the younger voices of the younger generation. We can no longer operate by not having conversations. We can no longer operate by not being online and being in front of technology. To my Spanish brothers and sisters, let's have more conversation and dialogue. There is a vicious attempt to keep us divided and divisive across the country. We need to come together and forget some of those stereotypes and really bond. To my Asian brothers and sisters, we can have more conversations. To my Indian brothers and sisters, to all different nationalities, let's have more dialogue. Let's come up with ways that we can continue the dialogue. I love you all. You can follow me at I am Ray Jackson on Instagram.
Evergrowing _JoJo on Instagram, but I'm not really on this, so just follow me on Facebook, Javon Anthony Pender.
And
MSV Gibson, so Miss V Gibson.
And again, I am Ray Jackson on Instagram for me. You can follow Ray Jackson on Facebook as well, or Ramon Jackson. I love you guys, and there's nothing you can do about it. Pastor Rick, thank you for joining. Brother Darren, thank you for joining.
Thank you,
everybody who commented.
Thank you so much.
Share this continuously and continue the conversation and join in with us. Invest in what we're doing by joining the conversation, reaching out to us, and also if you have the money and finances to help us, we'd appreciate that too. We love you, and good night.
Peace.